so much for joining me today and my following. A lot of people are vegan, but there's so many questions in this day and age about protein. I even had my daughter come home with a visitor, and it was all about the protein. And my first question was, I didn't know what to feed him because, and I can imagine that's how people feel when I go to their homes. They don't know what to feed me because it must be protein. So I wanted to bring a medical doctor. And what makes you special is you've been plant-based. So could you tell me a little bit about how long you've been plant-based and what, made you go in that direction?
So it's a strange little story, no, but I actually, when I was about 11, we were, let's say economically somewhat deprived. And then my single parent mom decided to quit her low-level secretarial job, since it barely would make the ends meet for her and her two kids, and go back to school. So we went from poor to destitute. Okay. But she came home after one biology course and said, the instructor said that if you eat animal products, it'll put cholesterol in your arteries. I mean, and this was like late 60s. And so she announced that we were all vegetarians, which, but, it was essentially not eating red meat. And then, as time went on and I went to medical school, I switched from a vegetarian or ovo-lacto vegetarian diet, which is unfortunately very completely misguided, but we didn't know that until probably 10 years ago. And I switched to eating the American Heart Association, which included chicken and fish, no skin, not fried, not realizing that that was misguided as well, and that the cholesterol content of any muscle of any animal has cholesterol in it by definition.
Wow.
So when you consume it, particularly if it's, I hope you'll excuse the term decaying flesh, but that's what it is. It changes the microbiome in your GI tract. And I know you're a big one about the microbiome and trying to fix things. And it turns out that it's really counterproductive to eat animal flesh. And therefore, you end up with all the cardiovascular risk factors. And one of those is high cholesterol. Now, it's interesting that not everybody's cholesterol is going to be the same when you have a specific diet, because we're all genetically different, okay? And it turns out that I had one of those cholesterol genes that doesn't even turn on until you're 45. I've met a fair number of patients who have the same thing. How can my cholesterol be this high? 5 years ago, it was perfect. Well, that's what happens. My LDL cholesterol, which optimal would be less than 100, was always around 105, 110. And then all of a sudden it was 170. And if I hadn't detected it and just let it go on, I don't know what would have happened, but I probably wouldn't be sitting here having conversations with you. But bottom line is that I remember the lessons of Dean Ornish and his lowering of LDL and plaque regression. So this was 2003 when I was at a cardiology meeting and got my finger stuck. And so as it turns out, I went on a plant-based diet that day and haven't knowingly eaten any animal products for now 21 years. By the way, for all your following, if you who have done the same thing, just out of interest, I did it at year 20. Type in your search engine vegan calculator, and you'll just be completely stunned for 20 years, the number of gallons of water and carbon dioxide and animal lives that I actually saved as an individual, just doing it for 20 years. But anyway, the bottom line was that 6 weeks later, my LDL went from 190, went from 170 down to 90. And that was actually tremendous. So I started plant-based nutrition in my cardiology clinic when I saw how good it was. I mean, I was used to giving statins and other cholesterol medicines. This was as good as any medication I'd ever used. And then, bingo, put them together. So I know we have a fair number of plant-based physicians, fair number, I think it's a declining number, who say don't take statins. I think most of them have learned the lesson of saying don't take statins, that's a dangerous thing because some prominent people had some heart attacks doing that. But there's way more physicians, particularly in cardiology, giving statins and never saying anything about diet. What I would like to say to both camps is that they're equally powerful. You put them together, and I don't want to knock on wood. I'm not superstitious, but I haven't had one patient who's taking a whole food plant-based diet and doing a statin have one event.
Wow. Well, me coming from an unscientific background whatsoever, I don't even have a lot of interest in science, to be honest with you. I started doing it because all the women in my family died overweight and very young. My mom died at 47, my grandmother at 50, and my great grandmother at 60. And at 77, I haven't known what illness is in the past 45 years. I just don't get sick. So I don't know where all the science comes in with that, which is why I wanted to have you on today. But here's what's going on. There's so many people now that are espousing a high protein, and they call it protein. They don't call it meat. And I think calling it protein makes it sound more like a vitamin, this high protein diet to feed their muscles and to grow muscles. And there's so many arguments against that. But I'm just thinking, even from a scientific point of view, you may be growing muscles, but what are you doing to the rest of your body? And is this the only way to grow muscle? And so they're really pushing this high protein animal and no carbs. This is the whole thing: high protein, no carbs. And I guess if you're 30, 40, 50 years old, you can get away with it. I don't know, but I'm just wondering, what are you thinking about this? And you should see how huge it is on the internet. It's even being attacked for my plant-based. Well, I'm afraid to go plant-based because of my hormones. I'm afraid to go plant-based because I can't build muscle. I don't know, doctor. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, I don't have any thoughts. I just have data, and I would encourage anyone to just put in a search engine or Chat GPT or Google AI, anything I say, just put it in there, and you'll see all the data synthesized for you in seconds. And what it'll tell you is that a keto diet, which got popularized a long time ago and keeps coming back over and over again, it went away in COVID. Why? Because it increased COVID mortality. Why? Because when you're eating decaying flesh, it ruins your microbiome. And it gives you that whole thing, that the scientific term that everybody learned, cytokine storm, that comes from your GI tract, from having the bad bacteria. Plant-based people, everybody keeps saying no vegans died of COVID. That may or may not be true. I've never found a vegan that died of COVID, but still, the idea, as a whole food plant-based vegan, the idea is that if you have a good microbiome, COVID was just a little bit of a flu. So I had it 2 or 3 times, it's not a big deal. And the funny part about having COVID when you're vegan is you wake up 4 days later and say, oh, I feel good. That means I didn't feel good yesterday. It's barely a thing. I know I had a headache, but it was gone in 20 seconds. I know I was upset, but it was gone in a minute. It's like when you're vegan, it's a completely different experience than when you eat meat. So that is published. Sarah Seidelman is the lead author. Please look at it. If you want to, in the middle of a pandemic, it was really dangerous. And now post-pandemic, with it waxing and waning, still pretty dangerous to go on that diet. Now, regardless of COVID, okay, or the next viral pandemic where your immune system is going to be called upon to fight it off again, there was an issue of the keto diet dramatically improving weight, dramatically improving diabetes, dramatically lowering blood pressure, and increasing the death rate. Well, why would that be?
Wow.
Why would that be? Is because there are a bunch of cardiac risk factors, and 2 of them are inflammation, okay, and the other one is cholesterol. And when you eat that particular diet with animal products, you will get much more cholesterol and much more inflammation that makes plaques unstable, and it makes you more likely to have a heart attack. So please, anyone who wants to do this or to try to coach somebody out of it, just put in your search engine, keto diet mortality, and you'll see a massive amount of data come up talking, not just about COVID, but about heart attacks, stroke, and death. So it's a dangerous diet.
Well, Dr. Williams, also in my unscientific way of living, one of the things I've done, because I felt that inflammation was one of the main things that created even aging, it created a buildup of everything in your system. So a detoxification program that I've done myself, that I learned from Dr. Wigmore, and one that I've taught for many, many years, it's all about bringing those inflammation things down. And I have to say, recently I've had a lot of stress in my life, because stress can create inflammation too. In my world, it isn't just about what you eat. And
Cortisol.
having an amount of stress in my life, I did one of my forms of, and it was amazing the amount of mucus that came out of me, having eaten no meat, fish, chicken, or dairy in 50 years. So many other arenas to look at other than what you're eating too. It's how you're living, how you're praying, how you're working out. It all comes into one thing. It's keeping all the balls up in the air at the same time. So that inflammation thing to me has been one of my main reasons of what I do. Aside from eating no meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, I take the time to reduce or get all the inflammation out of my system, because even though I'm eating the way I am, I'm eating stuff. It may say organic, but you know what? It's next to a farm that isn't organic, and the wind isn't going to stop there. So we're living in such a chemicalized world. So to me, giving up the meat, fish, and chicken and dairy was huge, but there's so many other areas that I can work on at the same time, in what I'm doing. So it's so exciting to have a medical doctor, because like I said, I've been doing this for 50 years, but to have the medical science and all the links that you're sending us to also corroborate what is going on. And, this whole keto, how about Dr. Atkins? Do we know? I mean, he's in my world, I think it was the 70s or 80s, he started everybody carb, no carb and high animal protein. And I think he recently had some complications and passed away. I don't know what from, but he was 73. I'm 77. I'm not living with any complications whatsoever. But you have the scientific data.
So a couple of things about the Atkins diet and focusing on meat, particularly processed meat. Either Atkins was completely wrong, or the Harvard School of Public Health is completely wrong. Nurses' Health and Health Professional Follow-Up Study, which mostly women and men respectively, show that there are no safe animal products. And substituting even just 3% of your animal protein for vegetable protein reduces your death rate, which means that there are no safe animal products. And some were safer than others. And now I have to tell you before I say this that, a 6% improvement in mortality for poultry and seafood, a little bit more, 8% by substituting away from dairy, more for red meat, more for eggs than red meat, and then processed red meat was like a 31% decrease in mortality, even just with a small change. Really important to get rid of animal products. Now, the only flaw that I see in that is that a lot of cardiologists worship at the swine. Oh, what a worship at the shrine of the Mediterranean diet, not realizing that the Predimed trial did not show a decrease in heart disease. It showed, that was the title, cardiovascular disease, but that included stroke, as does the American Heart Association, includes stroke. And so, but when you look at that 30% decrease, when you switch from red meat to predominantly fish with some poultry, that decrease was almost all stroke. The heart attack rate was the same. The cardiovascular death rate was the same. And the overall death rate, by the way, was the same. So all it does is protect against stroke. That's not a bad idea, but there's a better idea, and that is a whole food plant-based diet, which they showed. They took their data, turned it on its side, said, forget about the randomization of, Mediterranean with extra virgin olive oil, Mediterranean with nuts, or go ahead and eat the healthy red meat diet. When they turned the data on the side and said, who's eating plants? And they renamed their diet a vegetarian diet.
I love
Yeah, and it was very clear. It was a 41% decrease in death rate if you were doing a vegetarian diet. So the data is very clear from multiple sources inside the U.S. and outside, that every time you get rid of animal products and put plants in it instead, you decrease chronic disease, particularly cardiovascular disease and cancer. And I don't want to leave that one for too long without mentioning, now that I'm chair of medicine at University of Louisville, I'm learning a lot of stuff outside of cardiology. And one of them is that there is an alarming increase in the number of colon cancer cases in people in their 30s and 40s. And so we're dropping that age of colonoscopy. It used to be 50. It needs to be 30 but they've dropped it to 45 and they're considering dropping it further because this is essentially an epidemic of colon cancer that's happening, and we need to address it. And the best way to address it is to prevent it. Best way to do that is do not eat red meat or processed meat. And anything that you can do to get rid of animal protein and put in plant protein with all the wonderful, colorful vegetables that are designed to reduce cancer, that's what's really going to help us.
Wow. Wow. I'm so happy to get all this data, because what I used to say in my little way in my class, in the early 1800s, the only people that had heart attacks were the rich people, because they were the only ones that could afford to eat meat all the time. You know, it was such a, but this new wave to tell people that they need to eat animal protein, that they need to eat, and that they're going to build strong muscle is just so, I guess I don't want to tell people they shouldn't do where their hearts lead them, because this world is a university. We're here to learn, and cause and effect is what rules our world, right? But I want to have the scientific data and have a way to look into another way. And maybe, like you said, you don't stop everything at once. You kind of cross bridges. You know, maybe if you just give up the red meat and then give up the red meat and the chicken, because so many people are thinking, I know, I'm with you, okay? I mean, you couldn't pay me to eat any of those things.
Yeah.
Literally, my husband, big joke. My husband had a son, and his son used to say, because he was a little kid, he'd say, Karen, would you eat meat for $1 million? And I'd go, no. Would you eat it for 2 million? I'd go, no. Would you eat it for 3? I'd go, no. How about 10? And my husband would say, I'd shove it down in your throat for $10 million.
That's hilarious. So the little chuckle on my part, just not to interrupt you, was the idea of incrementalism versus repent, just turn 180 degrees and never look back and turn to salt. Yeah, I'm one of those people. And someone is asking me, how is it that you could change on a dime when you find out that refined grains, okay, which is one of the best parts of the keto diet, it gets rid of refined grains. Whole grains are good for you. Refined grains are not so good. If you get rid of the fiber, things go badly. Okay. How is it that you find out something, or, oh, the curry that I love so much had too much saturated fat because it's out of coconut oil. And when you find out something, you just stop it immediately. Well, it's because I'm African-American and I'm male and I'm over 60. And after 45 years of academic cardiology, sending people to bypass surgery, doing CPR in the coronary care unit, trying to treat their cardiogenic shock and all the severe heart failure and people have, I never want to be the person on the table. So I have more motivation than most people. And so I understand that incrementalism. If that's what it takes to do it, that'll work. But I can, as I've said publicly a few times, if you tell me that Pennzoil 10W30 is going to make sure that my coronaries never fill up with plaque, I'm drinking it. And that's not the case. It's whole food, plant-based diet.
Well, I have to say my motivation too is watching everybody die this horrible death in my family. They didn't just get sick and they suffered.
Yes.
And watching my mother suffer was enough to say, never for me again. I'm done with it. And she smoked cigarettes also, and I threw them away that day and never had another cigarette. So watching, but I think what's happened too, doctor, is so many people have been chemicalized that they aren't awake enough to even see what's going on in front of them. They aren't awake enough to say, look, cause and effect. I can see this happening. I'm going to do this. They're kind of lulled into, because every commercial on TV is a new drug for something, and people they aren't even questioning it. It's just like, well, I can continue this lifestyle and I'll take a pill or something and it won't affect me. So I think part of the reality that we're living in is people have just been kind of chemicalized into this. They don't think anymore. They just don't think, because especially in our community too, our African community, I mean, the size of people have just gotten so large and they're not thinking about it. And in fact, it's being celebrated. I think that the whole mental thing is being turned around into this weird reality that people just aren't paying attention anymore. If you look at people in my age group, like I'm 77, and you look at people back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they don't look anything like people did today. And people are just accepting it. And it's all the animal products and the processed foods and the meats that's creating it. And nobody's thinking and nobody's questioning it, which is why I'm so excited to bring you on. And I have a couple of other doctors that are going to come on because, people look at me and they go, oh, well, you're skinny and healthy. What's the big deal? And who wants to be that skinny anyway? Really? Really? The world has been turned around in such a weird way that nobody is paying attention and nobody's listening. So I'm so grateful for you. And hopefully this won't be the last time that I can get you here to help these people hear this. And what I would love to do, doctor, is do a live with you where the people could just come on and ask their questions. So maybe you'll give us that at some point in your busy schedule, because you're saving lives and you're telling people, and they're going to listen to you because you have that MD behind your name, and you're living it. You're not just talking it, you're walking the walk, and we can see you and how you're living. So I'm just beyond appreciative today of the time you've given me and my followers here today. And hopefully we can get you on again for a live. Maybe you'll carve out a few minutes again and give us a few more minutes of your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And I like to tell everybody in all of my things that if you don't take care of your body, the most magnificent machine you're ever going to be given, where are you going to live, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Well, you summarize it so very well. Can I just add one layer to it?
Add whatever you want. I just know you've got a busy schedule there. You add whatever.
I do. I need to go, but I just got to say one more thing. So many of my patients have family, and that family is dependent on them. Okay. And what I really need them to understand is that they make a decision 3 times a day, okay, of how much they're going to hurt their family. Health is wealth. Okay. Yeah, whether you're working or not taking up healthcare resources, health is wealth. And so you're going to decrease your family's vertical wealth by choosing to eat unhealthy food. So why not make choices that are going to make you healthy and not have your daughter taken off work to take you to the doctor or to take you to dialysis? Why would we do this to our families? We raise them, we educate them, we want them to be successful, and then we put a tax on them because of our choices. Not doing that.
I always tell my daughter the greatest gift I give you is that you won't have to take care of me.
Yeah. Well said.
You don't have to take care of me. That's the greatest gift I can give you as your mother at 77, right? I can take care of me till I decide it's time to transition. It won't be this horrible what I lived through. So I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, I was given the honor. I used to be able to feed him all the time. That's how we met. You used to come to my restaurants, right?
Every single one.
Right. You were there. And even when you moved away, we shipped you food for a while. So I know he walks the walk and walks what he talks. And we're so grateful to you, Dr. Williams, and hope to get you back sooner than later. Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.